For the charcoal boot camp, we are going to be working on gray construction paper. You need a stick of charcoal. It doesn't have to be a whole stick if you end up getting just a little nubby piece. A tortillon, which is used for blending. You can also use your fingers. And you need either a white charcoal pencil, but probably most people are in with a white stick of drawing chalk. It works the same way. Okay, we're gonna do some drills first. But before we do that, you want to put your first and last name and your block on your paper, either with a regular pencil or with the white pencil or white drawing stick. Don't use the black charcoal because it will just smudge and it might be hard to read your name and give you credit for doing this activity. So I'm going to write my name and my block. So let's say I'm in block 2. You can even just put a B and then the number. That looks more like a Z. Let me fix that. If you do end up using the charcoal pencils, there's white charcoal pencils and there are black charcoal pencils. They can be sharpened in a regular pencil sharpener. So you can use the electric pencil sharpener on the cart, or you can use a hand sharpener. Just make sure you're sharpening over a trash barrel with the hand sharpener so you don't get lots of charcoal all over your paper and you will ruin it, okay? First thing we're gonna do with our black charcoal, whether it's a big piece or a little piece, you'll see that it's a square. Okay, we're gonna try drawing with just one of the sharp edges. If your edges are kind of rounded because your charcoal's been used by other people, that's okay, it will still create the same effect. So we're just gonna create some straight lines using the edge. You can try pushing versus pulling. Try making perpendicular lines. Okay, so using just the edge. You can also draw with the corner, and again, if your corners are rounded, you can still draw with them. So we can go ahead and we can try making some wavy lines with our corners. Okay. You end up using mostly your gross motor skills with the charcoal sticks just because they are so large, so you end up moving your whole arm around. Let's go ahead and try some circles. If I push down with moderate pressure, I start to deposit more and more charcoal on my paper. You can see that the charcoal dust is really gathering and it's moving around because I have the fan pointed at me. I'm going to ask that because of COVID and general sanitary precautions that you don't take your mask down and don't blow on the charcoal. If you get too much charcoal deposited on your paper, you can actually pick up your paper and give it a good tap to get the excess charcoal dust off. It will get all over your table. I don't recommend that you have your laptop or water bottle or anything on your table while you're working with charcoal. With either your fingertip or your tortillon, you're gonna blend the charcoal, okay? And you can get a really nice, rich, saturated black. With the charcoal, again, we're gonna draw an oval under our circle. And you can be drawing larger than I am, that's fine. I'm gonna lightly, I'm barely touching the paper with my charcoal. And I'm going to smudge it with either my finger or my tortillon. I like to use my finger because I know that by the end of this, I'm going to end up washing my hands anyway. Another tool that I forgot to tell you to get is an eraser. So I'm going to go grab an eraser really quick. I like to use the tiny erasers because they do end up having sharper corners than the bigger erasers. You could use the eraser on the end of your pencil, but typically once you get eraser and charcoal mixed together, it's hard to separate them out, so just be mindful of that. So I'm just going to erase some of these extra smudgy bits. Again, pick up my paper, give it a good tap. Similar to the graphite, I can use my eraser to pick up some of the charcoal, so I can say I have a lighter area up here on my circle. I do realize that my hand is kind of in the way because I drew very small. So I'm starting to pick up some of the charcoal. I'm working in an arc kind of fashion. Again, pick up your artwork to tap it, don't blow on it. Because we're working on gray paper, you're not gonna get a very bright highlight with just erasing. So if you're using your compressed drawing stick or the charcoal pencil, you can actually deposit some white on there. And here's where the tortillon comes in handy for me because I've got charcoal all over my fingers. So I can use my tortillon and I can blend it without making it too muddy, okay? So tortillons are reusable. They should not get thrown away. I'm the only person who throws away gross tortillons. So even if a tortillon looks gross, it can still be used for this activity. Make that a little bit more subtle. To show you the pencil, right? We can make more pencil kinds of marks. And you don't have to always blend it. Some people really like the look of having the really bold, strong line there. I'm gonna take my eraser. I'm gonna pick up, excuse my camera shake. I'm gonna pick up some of my charcoal under the circle so I can see that there's the circle and the surface it's sitting on. I don't wanna try to pick up all of it. So between the charcoal and the toned paper, or the paper that is already gray, it should be a nice mid-tone. Okay, so with charcoal, it's easier to get very, very dark values, and with the white charcoal or compressed drawing sticks, you can get very, very light values. So either using the black stick charcoal or the white drawing stick or the white charcoal pencil, whichever one you have, let's try drawing a cube together. So I'm gonna try using my gross motor skills to make my straight lines that are parallel. I'm gonna pull towards me because that's my preference. If you don't have a preference, you can just mimic what I'm doing, that's fine. To make this look three-dimensional, I'm gonna go off at an angle. Remember, I'm not gonna really harshly judge how well your cube looks. I'm really looking for, did you try to do the activity with the charcoal? That's not bad. Okay, so if you do it with the black stick or with the compressed charcoal or with the charcoal pencil, either way, this is fine. We're gonna assume the light's coming from a same or similar place that the light was for our circle or our sphere. With charcoal, you do wanna try drawing on the same side of the paper just because you don't wanna smudge your work and make it difficult for me to understand visually, did you do the activity? Are you developing your skills? I'm gonna shade the top of this fairly lightly. I'm gonna have a bright spot on this edge, so I'm pushing down with gentle pressure. I don't wanna use too much pressure with the black or the white charcoal because it will snap, and that will be just frustrating for everybody involved. Do try to keep your charcoal more together than not. So with the big sticks of charcoal, it is kind of tricky to manipulate and to stay in the lines, but that's what I want you to practice. Okay, so I'm gonna shade it in really lightly, barely touching the paper, depositing some charcoal. I'm gonna smudge and blend. Again, using a finger is my preference, but if you prefer to use the tortillon, that is your preference, that's fine. Okay, and I'm gonna use my pinky for the white rather than using the tortillon, just for fun. There will be time at the end of this, if you clean up when you're asked to wash your hands at the sink. You can also use hand sanitizer. I'm gonna get some of that dust off. So if my light's coming from over here, I'm gonna say that this side of my cube is gonna be darkest. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna push down with moderate pressure. Not too much again, I don't want it to snap or crumble. Learning your motor control is important. Or being more mindful of your motor control, I suppose. That's a better way of putting it. So we're gonna fill it in. I'm really trying to fill in all of the paper here. Again, you can see the charcoal dust moving on my screen because I'm gonna give it another tap. Some people like to tap it onto the floor or off the side of their table, which isn't necessarily a problem. You could do that. For these corners, I'm gonna use my tortillon because I have adult-sized hands. If you have small hands, or if you drew your cube larger, you could probably use your finger. Try to stay in the lines, really blending it in there. Give another tap. Okay. So to make this more of a subtle transition by taking my eraser and picking up some of that charcoal. Again, excuse my camera shake. So it's kind of transitioning in a diagonal fashion. It's picking up some of the charcoal, but not all of it. I'm gonna clean up this edge, even though I know I'm gonna make a cast shadow, just the shadow on the ground. I'm pretty happy with how the white charcoal is interacting with just the color of the construction paper on the top, so I'm not going to put any black charcoal on the top of that. I'm going to sketch out the shadow. It's going to have straight lines, and I can even use the edge of my charcoal. Go off the edge like that. I'm going to use the side of my charcoal. Light pressure, not too much. And deposit some charcoal. Get up into that crevice. But if you drew really small, it's not going to be easy to use the side to shade like this. So I do recommend you draw the cube at least as big as my cube. You can draw it larger, but I wouldn't draw it any smaller. Tap. Well, looks pretty good. Okay, we're almost done with the boot camp. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a human eye together with the charcoal. Okay, so you can use your white charcoal stick. You could sketch first in pencil if you really want to. That is perfectly fine with me. I'm going to draw in this real estate down here. So if you have been drawing your shapes really large and you do need another sheet of paper, that's fine. Just please make sure that you put your name and your block on there. Okay, so for drawing an eye, I'll start with the tear duct. Come up off the tear duct and make an arch. This is not from a reference or anything. This is just, you know, a generic how to draw an eye. I'm gonna curve around the bottom of the tear duct a bit. Make the lower eyelid. Tear duct, eyelid, connective tissue. I'm gonna sketch the iris, which is the colorful part of the eye. You could make your eye looking in a different direction if you want. You can't see the entire iris at the same time. Just a nice big circle. And I'm drawing kind of lightly. I'll draw the pupil, just the black part of your eye. Sometimes people have an upper eyelid crease, but not always. So if you wanted to draw an upper eyelid crease, you can. If you look at that poster in the Arum called The False Mirror, that's kind of what we're going for here. Except the false mirror doesn't have eyelashes, which makes it kind of freaky. Okay, so with your white drawing stick or white charcoal pencil, go ahead and fill in the sclera or whites of the eye. I'm not being too precious about getting outside of the lines at this point. I know there's a lot of blending in my future. I can use my tortillon to blend, but the end of my tortillon is black, so I could get a paper towel and I can wipe this off. I can also just kind of, because this is a boot camp and not a final product, I can just kind of wipe off some of the charcoal on my paper here until it stops doing that. Gonna look a little bit off-white because of the remaining charcoal on my tortillon and because of the gray paper. Give it a tap. So again, if you're not somebody who does art for fun, it's okay if your eye is not something that's like, oh my goodness, amazing. If you want to see that you put a good faith effort into making it and that you showed me that you're continuing to build your charcoal skills. Even if you're deciding, you know, I don't think I'm going to use charcoal if I get a choice in the future, that's fine. It's okay to step outside of your comfort zone. Blend that. Tap. Okay, so the pupil is going to be black mostly, but I am going to make a little bit of eye shine with my white drawing stick or white charcoal pencil. Usually it's like a circle shape. You can have some hard edges. If it's like a window reflecting in the eye, right, it wouldn't be a circle. I'm gonna take my charcoal. Gonna use moderate pressure to really deposit some of the charcoal. And then I'm going to use my finger to blend. You can see my hand's getting really gross as I'm working, and that's okay because I'm only touching my artwork and my art materials. If you are using your laptop to watch this video and not using the video on the Promethean board, just make sure you're using your not charcoal covered hand to touch your laptop, because charcoal, dust, and electronics really don't mix. Okay, I'm gonna shade in the iris, so I'm just making like a zigzag kind of shape. Go around the perimeter. I'm really gonna rely on a combination of the charcoal and the color of the paper here to get this kind of texture. If you really look at your iris, the colorful part of your eye, you can see there's a lot of textures and color variations in there. The tortillon can come in handy right about now. It has some white charcoal on it, and I'm okay with that because it's gonna add some variety. I am gonna go back in and add some white areas to this as well. If you need to wash your hands in the middle of a project or in the middle of a boot camp, that's fine. Just be aware that they're just gonna get filthy again, but sometimes your hands just get so covered in charcoal that it's hard to not leave fingerprints all over the artwork. You'll notice I'm not really using my left hand at all to draw with or to touch the actual artwork. I'm just holding my paper. So try to keep one hand more clean than the other. It will make cleanup and using your computer much easier. Give it some more texture in here. A little more blending. And sometimes I'll switch to this pencil. I'm trying to switch to the pencil to show you, what it looks like compared to the drawing chalk. There are not as many white charcoal pencils as there is drawing chalk, I understand. So it's hard to make a choice. Sometimes it's just like you're stuck with it. I just want you to be informed of how they do behave a little bit differently. Blend this. Tortillon also creates more precise blending too, which is nice. I don't have any more clean fingertips, unfortunately. I guess I could try blending with my knuckle. And if you're at a tilted table, which I'm obviously working at right now, it is frustrating when things roll away. Just do your best to keep them on your table and in one piece. So if the charcoal falls, it just makes a giant mess. Okay, so back to our eraser friend. I'm gonna pick up some of my white charcoal to create a shadow under the eyelid. So I'm not drawing with the black charcoal, I'm erasing the white charcoal so you can see the gray construction paper through it a little bit more. Not picking it all up. Very similar to graphite. And there is some charcoal on my eraser, obviously. Do the best you can. Okay. So it's a pretty good eye. Let's add some value to the lid. I'm gonna make a little bit of shading here. I'm barely touching the paper. Again, if you didn't have an eyelid crease on your artwork, that's fine. Not everybody has eyelid creases. Or rather, they could look different if they do have them too. This is just a floating eyeball too, so it's hard to ground it in like, this is a face, but we're gonna add a little bit more volume here. I'm going to shade the tear duct just a little bit, not too much. Pushing down with more pressure to get those bold lines to pop out. Blend it with my pinky. Take some of my white here. Tear ducts, if you look at the false mirror painting that's in the art room, where it has the clouds in the iris, you'll see how Rene Magritte shaded his tear ducts, using color of course, but it gives you the same general idea. Just gonna give it a little bit of a water line here, just the inside of your lower lid. And I'm gonna take my charcoal covered pinky and blend it because I already have charcoal on my pinky. Blend this up here. So you'll notice I'm also blending in the direction of whatever form I'm trying to create. So it's still two-dimensional, obviously, but I'm trying to create the suggestion that it is three-dimensional, just like we did with the sphere and the cube. Take my white here, put a little highlight on the lid. Not too much, just barely touch the paper. Blending, deposit more. If you do have a small piece of drawing chalk, because sometimes they do break, you can also use the side of it in a small area. All right, so we just need some eyelashes and then we're good to go. Eyelashes with the black charcoal pencil would work the best, but we're gonna use a stick just because that's what I've been using this whole time. So eyelashes you wanna make in a cluster. The upper eyelashes are typically longer and they point towards the outer crease as they work their way out, and then they point towards the inner tear duct. They usually a little bit shorter towards the tear duct, and they usually point straight up with a little curve in them. You'll see I'm drawing them in clusters, so it's more believable and it doesn't look like you have spider eyes. If you wanted to use the white charcoal, you could, right? Because if somebody has very fair hair, they would have more blonde eyelashes. On the bottom lid, we're gonna put the eyelashes in the water line. So we're gonna make short arcs in clusters. So pointing out, pointing in, pointing down. Clusters of 3 or 4 I find are pretty good. You can always sit back and look at it and say, yes, that's believable, or no, it looks like a spider. Okay, so after you finish this, because the charcoal is quite messy and I don't want them to smudge all over everybody else's boot camp evidence, we are going to put these on the drying rack. I know they're not a painting, they're not wet, but the drying rack is really the safest place for them to be. Before you wash your hands, return your tools, wash your hands, then put your evidence on the drying rack. If you do want to take a picture and turn it in digitally and take this home, that is fine as well.